And we are live. Excellent.
Hello. I
This
just
is
realized I need to turn the light on.
well. That
Okay.
is actually the only uh, you know setup based technology issue that we've had this week. I was asleep when you when you messaged at 7 minutes to and said, "Are you set up?" and 4 minutes to, I said yes. They know in those 3 minutes I woke up and turned on the streaming computer.
That's awesome because for the other stream that we don't talk about on this stream, funny story.
Link in background.
Funny story. The streaming PC is down south.
Right.
So
Okay,
there's
so you don't just need a cable to her.
right. So yeah, but it's not a big deal. I have all the files, so I'm just gonna
Hmm.
do it from a different machine. I've got like 8 computers here, so it's not a problem. Down south, I don't have so much stuff.
Yeah. Well, I am tired. It's only the middle of the week. I've discovered that doing a full time job and a PhD and political activism and running two streams and a blog and a podcast is quite a lot of mental effort.
It sounds like a lot.
Hmm.
I'm a bit exhausted hearing about it.
Yeah, I am. I would say that it takes a bit out of the old brain, but uh, is enjoyable nonetheless. What kind of shit talking do we want to do before until we can put off thinking about code for as long as possible?
I don't know that I have any stream related shit talking. I
Yeah,
have a new office.
yeah. I was going to say you've been rebuilding your house. You want to talk about
Yeah. So there used to be this in the I think the Americans call it Foursquare style when you have a house that has 4 rooms on the main floor.
that? Right.
And
Okay.
that's basically the style of this house. You walk into the foyer and there's some stairs going upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the living room in the back left corner and the kitchen in the front right, and the what used to be, I guess, a dining room in the
Mm.
back right, but it became my office.
Right.
But there was a door on 2 walls, one to the living room, one to the kitchen.
Mm.
I wanted to close in the wall with the door, which is this one here. I guess I can turn my camera slightly.
Yeah, there is no door there. I'll give you that.
There is no door there now, and then I had to do the same thing on the other side,
And now you can't get out.
and it was pretty good. It turned
Mm.
out pretty well. Because the house was built in 1959, and I think they milled the lumber on site.
Right.
It's not any modern standard sizes. So when I had the door opening to fill in, I
Yeah.
needed to fill it in such that when I put the drywall on top, it was
Mm.
flush up to the 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 boarding underneath. And during this process, I realized why a stud finder wouldn't work in this room. This is this
There's no
is
studs.
where this is where the dad joke is. That's I can never get it right, but the dad joke is that I can't use stud finders; they always get confused around me. And the reason it wouldn't work in this house, I learned when I ripped the wall down or the door out, is
Yeah.
because it's got 18 millimeter boards
Mm.
underneath the wall covering on both sides.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where the stud is for hanging stuff because you
You're not
just
going
stick a
to drill
screw in
that
the wall
deep.
anywhere
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like doing drywall and construction. I do not like doing mudding and taping and sanding.
Hmm.
So I just hung my guitars on the wall and decided I'm going to teach my wife how to do it because she does like that kind of fine.
Yeah.
So she's
Yeah.
looking forward to doing the bits that I hate. This is why we're a good team.
That's good. That is good teamwork. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
So
So
I
it's turning out pretty well.
I had my my bathroom done a few years back, and similarly there has been. Well, in this case, it's not that they just did it on with local materials to no standards. It's that they evidently did it to the standards of the time, and Britain being a forward-thinking and progressive nation, decimalised at some point between the house being built in the 70s and now, um,
Right.
which only means that the length of the uh, like everything in the bathroom has changed from a number of inches to a number of millimeters, but the rounding that has involved means that a modern bath is exactly the same length as the room if there were no plaster on the walls.
Right. I ran into a similar thing here. Sheets of drywall are European standard is 2,400 millimeters,
Right.
and Swedish standard is 2,500 millimeters. And I didn't know because I bought the drywall on the way up. I just bought the Swedish standard stuff.
Yeah.
But my house is 2,400 millimeters, so I had to cut 10 millimeters off of every board of drywall instead of just buying the European standard.
Right.
And I think,
if you bought if you bought 240 boards, you'd have one free. You just glue the 10 millimeter bits together.
Right. No, I only bought 8 boards.
Okay.
So I ended up having to do more cutting than I was hoping, but it ended up turning okay. And two other interesting things about the way this house is built. The only thing I don't like about the way it was built, which is just a function of the time, is that they didn't have drywall in 1959 when the house was built. They used masonite.
Okay.
And I hope the environmentalists haven't chimed in yet, because as far as I know, masonite is just pressed wood and it's perfectly safe to burn. And so I did that.
I won't look it up on Wikipedia for you, just in case. Probably got formaldehyde or something in it.
So the masonite burned so fast that I figured that the wall that I have now that has drywall on it would survive a bomb explosion. But the house would still burn down in about 35 seconds. Because all of the other walls are covered in masonite. And it burns really, really fast.
Right.
So it turned out pretty well. There were, and now I have also I insulated that wall because all the interior walls are insulated with, I think, cotton and horsehair. And I put in modern insulation in the hole, or what was the doorway, and there's actually nearly no sound travel through the wall now, which is great.
Nice.
The TV is on that wall. So yeah. So the office is now together, which is really nice.
So I lied. I looked up masonite, and it's stuck together just with lignin because it's held together. It's wet. It's steamed, and then it's pushed together at high pressure, and then heated. So there's no adhesive. It just sticks itself together.
Oh, well, that's great. I didn't think about that. It burned so fast. I didn't have time to think about whether it was safe to burn.
What the accelerant was. What was causing that.
So now one of the next projects is to replace all of the other wall coverings with something not quite so flammable. But that is a project for another year.
Yeah, Movnot one says check your smoke detector batteries often, but it sounds like the plastic case on the smoke detector would last longer than the wall would.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's the smoke detectors work fairly well in this house, but they are connected to the ceiling, and they are all connected to the ceiling through masonite.
Yeah.
So the smoke detector will be the thing beeping at the bottom of the pile of ash.
By the time the magic smoke has escaped, it's all a bit late. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so that ended up going pretty well. I have a really nice office to work in now, and so it's pretty good. And then I also got some of the nerds will be interested. My new desk is a fully Jarvis, which is within a rounding error more expensive than the equivalent IKEA one and 100 times better. You can get them if you're in Europe at fully.eu, Fully. They're not paying me to say this, but they are welcome to. I just really like it. And it's a fantastic desk. And they come in all kinds of different sizes. I got the bamboo one with the curved front, so I can sit closer to my gigantic screen.
So you can watch like simulated tennis and have to do this while you.
Oh, It's completely nuts. I have the streaming window over here, the VNC window over here,
Hmm.
and a bunch of other stuff on the sides. Nothing overlapping.
Well, they
So,
named their bar stool after your dog. They have
oh, I didn't.
a bar stool. Well, it's not a
I
bar
didn't
stool.
know.
It's one of those standing desk like posture stools. It's called Luna.
Oh, oh, well, that was nice of them.
Yeah. Now I looked at the IKEA equivalent of that, and it looks like a nice thing because I've got the IKEA Scarster. Um,
Yeah,
this is you
yeah.
know see
I
a
think
tiny square in the corner of the screen, but nonetheless, it is over there somewhere. Uh, and yeah, they've got basically a bar stool you can use
yeah, I had the
for leaning on it.
Scarsta a couple of years ago that had the hand crank for raising and lowering it.
Yeah, that
It
one.
was a nice enough desk, but I'm a violent typer, and the screen shakes or the desk shakes when I
Right.
type, and the Fully doesn't have that problem. The more expensive option, the key equivalent of this desk is called Bekant, I think Bekant,
Mm.
um, and I think that would be the closest equivalent, but it's only maybe 5 or 10% cheaper, and it's nowhere near as nice.
Mm.
So I'm very happy with the desk, and free shipping, no matter where you get it.
Okay.
And they delivered it and then changed the delivery address halfway through for me, and I got it 4 days later at a
Nice.
different address than I had originally ordered it to. So it was fantastic. The whole experience was very good.
I go to
I guess
well,
they're stream relevant content.
free delivery doesn't apply. Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are important materials in Objective C coding. I'm gonna guess that free delivery doesn't apply to the EU or to the UK, or if it does, it takes fucking ages to get here.
It applies to the EU, so I guess not
Mm.
the UK. Although that might be a thing that they're working on because your troubles are new.
The troubles is definitely the word for it. Yeah, with the
Well, well, right. The troubles disappeared and then they came back.
and then they came back. Yeah, yeah, we brought them back. Thank you to Boris Johnson. Someone said, that Britain's biggest problem isn't like the Brazil variant or the Indian variant; it's the Etonian variant. And there's definitely a ring of truth to that.
I do love that. Although I shouldn't laugh at how other countries are handling the virus
The
because I
Rona.
live in it's I keep getting messages from my family and friends in Canada saying, "Oh, I got vaccinated. All of my friends are fully vaccinated. You live in Sweden. You must have been vaccinated ages ago." And I said, "Nope. I think I might qualify in July because of my age.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think I need it because I think we had it. We just our testing was not quite lined up well enough to know for sure if the negative test was negative or if we just tested too late."
No, I think the most invulnerability is conferred by having both the vaccine and the Rona.
Oh, well then sometime in July I will go to a super spreader event. I started asking people when they get their vaccination. I always ask them, which super spreader event are you going to celebrate?
Yeah.
And you're due for yours soon, right?
My second dose of AstraZeneca blood clot inducing vaccine is tomorrow. So I then have, what is it? Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the second dose that you reach vaccination?
I don't remember. I think I heard 3 weeks, but I don't
3
remember.
weeks. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's call it 3 weeks. That'll be sort of beginning of June. I don't have any immediate plans to go to a super spreader event. I will go to. I am going on holiday in August, which was supposed to be a folk festival, which was postponed from August last year, and has been postponed again now until August next year. But my accommodation was only postponed by 1 year, so I'm just going to go on holiday instead.
All right, that sounds fun too. Where's the folk festival?
Sidmouth in Devon on the southwest coast of the UK.
Oh, it's really nice there. All right, that's great. Since you made the joke about the AstraZeneca vaccine,
Yeah.
The thing that I learned recently, one of my neighbors up here who works in elder care got the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, and they stopped giving the second dose to people in her age group.
Right.
Because of the blood clotting risk, which it basically doesn't exist. You're more likely to get a blood clot from any one of your birth control pills if you take such things. And you take those. Well, I think birth control has like 25 placebos and 5 drugs, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you are 6 or 7 times more likely to get a blood clot from any one of those things that you take 5 days a month. You are probably infinitely more likely to get a blood clot from the vaccine than from your birth control pills, but
only because I refuse to take my birth control pills.
Right, but at least you're not.
So far, I haven't got pregnant though.
Right. Well, you've been lucky.
It's crazy in the States how these, the like anti-mask and anti-vax laws are being presented as giving people, choice and control over their bodies, and are being presented by the same people who are presenting the like anti-abortion laws.
And most of those people are anti-birth control as well, or a lot of them. And so it completely makes absolutely no sense. But that's why I moved to this side of the world. Sweden is not perfect, but the neighbors are better than the neighbors of Canada.
Matthew Scala says someone got banned from a social network recently for saying men can't get pregnant. I didn't say men can't get pregnant. I said I have so far not got pregnant.
Right.
Which I am prepared to back up with, I would say evidence, but these days it's getting a bit difficult to justify that even.
Yeah, it's yeah. I guess free software community news that we learned today.
Oh yeah.
Freenode is basically dead now.
Yeah.
So apparently the keys got sold or handed to somebody by somebody who had them. And so all of the people who were volunteering to run Freenode for a long time and doing great work, Freenode is has been a very useful resource up to now. So basically everyone quit.
Yeah, so I think what happened was that like Freenode was, as you say, so basically volunteer run, but like all of the infrastructure was owned by some kind of hosting company who were basically sort of running it in the public interest and had said we will not sell this to other corporate interests, and then sold it to other corporate interests. And there's reasons why the people don't like this particular corporate interest, but there are reasons not to like any corporate interest, so that's not particularly exciting. And then but this person, the new owner, who is called Andrew Lee, I think, started running ads on the freenode.net homepage, and that was the last straw for these people who complain about how there's no money in their open source communities that they work in. The idea that someone would bring money in was definitely against their principles of complaining about how they don't get paid, and so they all left. And there's now a thing called Libera.chat, which is basically Freenode but run by people who don't have any money.
Yeah,
and refuse to get any.
Well, we already had an alternative to Freenode called OFTC, which is the Open and Free Technology something.
Chat?
What the C for. Possibly. And that started because people didn't like how Freenode was being run when it was being run. Hello, Amiga Gamer 1200. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Community. Open and Free Technology Community.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I believe that is sponsored by Software in the Public Interest, which is the same group that handles Debian Funny.
Yeah.
And so that has existed and still exists. So So we don't really need a new thing. But as much as I don't like fragmentation, I'm always a fan of having multiple choices.
No, fragmentation isn't a big deal in IRC. Like,
Right.
we've got an IRC server in theory, in that there is a bridge to the Mattermost, and it provides access to this channel. If you want to talk to other people, you have to talk to another channel, and there will be different people on that channel. Like the idea that sort of
Right.
Slack are doing anything by centralizing IRC other than making it harder for themselves to run, so that they then have to make it more complex, hire more people, and charge you more, is a fiction.
Right. Yeah. Actually, this is a thing that I see all over the place. Is software just being deliberately made more complex so that people can hire more people and spend more money and so on. And that's this is the thing. I'm sure all of my opinions have come out in this stream at various points, and they can be strung together from the back.
Yeah, we can just like splice you saying whatever we want out of words you've used in the past. Actually, so.
Right. If we ever become popular, then people will start doing that anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunately, we have. I think we've talked on this stream about the problems of monetizing all of these things that we build for free, and how do you get paid when companies are using your thing that you decided deliberately to give away for free, that you decided deliberately that companies don't have to pay you, and companies have all the money, and then how do you get paid for this thing that you deliberately decided to give away? And it is a problem. And I think we talked probably 4 or 5 streams ago now on this one about how the software licensing isn't actually, it was a good way to do this in the past. But the companies found ways around the software licenses. I think Gamer 1200 says self-support, and that model is working well.
Specifically, he has dick fingers, so self-support.
Well,
which is basically what Red Hat Enterprise Linux is, support.
Yep. And I hope that the future of my own income will be providing professional services for things, for running the things that people could run themselves if they had the skills and the time and the care, and running them for them. Things like Nextcloud and e-commerce platforms and stuff like that.
So that's like I have definitely found that that is basically. So we were talking. This is actually something that we haven't had on the stream yet. So we shall have this conversation on the stream now. We were talking about the idea. I said I don't like the phrase software as a service, but I also don't like Richard Stallman's counter phrase of service as a software substitute, because they both suggest a service, and the service sector is people doing time dependent, or rather time-consuming tasks where there is no like product at the end. They're not making something. What you are paying for is directly their time. So, someone who is selling burgers in McDonald's is service sector, not because they produced the burger, they didn't, the cook did, but because you are interacting with them to purchase the burger and you are using their time to perform that transaction. Hairdresser is a mythical being that I have heard descriptions of, and I
have not recently.
They are service. What they do is a service because you spend your time getting the haircut. If you have sort of 2 hairdressers, and you can do 2 haircuts in parallel, but they probably won't do one together, and you can't improve the efficiency of hairdressing by machinery or by not particularly by machinery, like the hot air dryer is it, and you can't produce new like workflows or anything. You just have a haircut. That's just the thing that happens.
Mhm.
Software as a service is not that. Software as a service is a product where the business model is recurring revenue, um, and the product was potentially built up front. You are not paying for the ongoing work that goes into evolving and maintaining that product, because all you know about the product is that it existed in the fashion that you were willing to pay for at the time that you signed up. It's not a
Right.
service. You are not getting someone's time for your money. You are getting access to this service. So I thought software rental. But the problem is you're not renting the software even, because they all just like lock your data in and stop you getting it out unless you carry on paying the rent. So what you're actually paying for is data hostage.
Yeah, yeah. You're you're basically paying to have access to your own data, which is a thing that I find completely ridiculous. Um, and we are still looking for sort of a better term for describing these kinds of things. Um, I think I did talk on this stream about how I looked at all of the different CAD software and a few other
Yeah.
products recently, and noticed that they became infinitely more expensive and are far less useful than they were 20 years ago. AutoCAD is my favorite example of this. AutoCAD today is complete garbage compared to the AutoCAD that I could run on the G3 iMac that's sitting behind me, um, or or any CAD software of the day. AutoCAD is not as good as that stuff is, but it costs infinitely more money. I think they want like thousands of dollars per month or something.
Yeah.
Photoshop is another example of something that is far worse now.
Well, so like Photoshop, that is an interesting uh, model where, like, if you are a person who works with Photoshop, then you, if you are a person who like spends their full life in Photoshop, then Creative Cloud is probably better than what you did before, because you pay rental to always have latest Photoshop rather than paying large amount of money to have immediate Photoshop. And if you
For the people
trust
who are buying it every year, yeah.
Adobe, then like you are then you're actually coming out ahead. If you need it a bit for your work, then it's worse, because like you probably could have done everything you needed with Photoshop 5, but now you have to rent Photoshop CC forever, because your PTSD files are being held hostage in the Adobe Cloud. But if you are like at the end where you are an occasional hobbyist where you barely use it at all, then once again it's better, because you can rent CC for a month, and like make your wedding invitation or whatever, download the EPS file, and then stop paying for it. You don't have to buy $1,500 worth. So there's this weird sort of pricing model, but the fundamental thing remains, or rather, there's this weird sort of pricing curve where there are multiple inflection points for which one comes out ahead. But the fundamental point remains that if you bought Photoshop, however much they charged for it, and I'm not saying that pricing was fair, what you got was Photoshop forever, or at least until the operating system that you were using or the computer you were using would no longer run that executable. And the other way around, like the with the software as a service, you're locked into both paying in order to have access to your files, and keeping your computer and your operating system and your browser up to date, so that you have versions that are supported by that hostage platform. I think we need to get away from data hosting and call it hostage, and then just call them hostage platforms.
That's really good. That's really good naming. The other thing, when I was doing a lot of like startup work back in sort of Web 2.0 days, where
Hmm.
a startup would come to me with an idea and I would implement the whole thing. Very often, the designer would send me a PSD file of the
Yeah.
design, and then I would use Photoshop, 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah.
And the ability to pay for Photoshop for 1 month at a time is better in that case, which you described.
Hmm.
Uh, but the other thing is that this software isn't actually. I just don't think it's actually getting any better. Um, and the other thing that Amiga Gamer 1200 points out in chat is the average artist who isn't interested in computing, who trained in Photoshop, always use it, and won't consider alternatives. That is a thing that I noticed actually when I was talking to some architects recently.
Hmm.
Architects used to be architects. They studied architecture. They learned how to design buildings, and things like that. But I've met several architects in the last couple of years who don't actually really understand architecture. They are just expert users of AutoCAD.
Right,
I think it's actually Revit is the latest one, or ArchiCAD. They and I think that this has happened to a lot of things. A lot of things. You have Photoshop experts, not computer graphics experts, and the knowledge isn't really transferable between Photoshop or other image editing things, unless you're trying to make a Photoshop clone.
No, that's exactly why. That is the kind of thing that that these providers want. As Matt Scarlett talks about boiling the frogs. You carry on using this thing until you realise how bad a position you're in, but then you are in that position and you're stuck. And I think with with things like the Apple have been sort of proving that a lot in their discovery. In Epic's discovery in this Apple versus Epic case. Apple is just saying. Are now saying out loud the things that they had been trying to keep secret that were fairly obvious, but things like we want to keep people in the platform, we want to lock developers in, we want to lock users in.
Yeah, well, I have a funny story about the things that are not said out loud that everyone sort of knows. I did some consulting for an oil company in Canada years ago, an energy company, not an oil company, and they had I talked, I think, on this stream or the other one last week about about the ridiculous way to get oil out of the ground. We pump steam into the ground, make big lakes of oil, and then skim it off the top, and you get really dirty, shitty oil. What happens in Canada, or it used to happen very often, is birds would mistake these lakes of oil for lakes and try to fish in them. And there was one incident that hit all the newspapers where thousands and thousands and thousands of birds were killed. And it was on national headlines and stuff. And I got hired to work on a project where they wanted to automate. They had somebody in a truck driving around to the various sites and looking at the dials on the gauges and writing them in pen in the logbook. And they wanted to replace this with the database solution. And it was going to cost them tens of millions of dollars to build it through the company that I was working with. It was going to be ridiculously expensive to maintain. And what they're actually doing...
They'd fire 3 union guys.
Right, but I mean, there was that too. But they were paying 3 salaries for the guys who drove around and wrote the things in the books. Like, it was ridiculously expensive. And at one of the meetings I was at, and I tend to be, I categorically love snark, and I am an often purveyor of snark.
I haven't noticed.
I was sitting in a meeting with all the people who were deciding the system, and one of the bean counters showed up and said, "This system is going to cost us this many millions of dollars, but it only costs us about $500,000 to have people driving around. Why are we replacing it with a database system?" And I said, "Because it's easier to accidentally delete some database records than burn books when 3,000 birds die." And I was expecting either to get fired or that people would laugh at
or
my
promoted,
jokes.
yeah.
What I got was sort of these knowing looks between people at the table, and I could tell they were thinking, who told the contractor about why we're doing it?
Yeah.
Who told him this secret? Who told him this thing that we don't say out loud?
How did our playbook get out? Who didn't burn that?
Right. I ended up excusing myself from that project and finding it, and I went to work for Microsoft instead, on what used to be called Windows Cloud is now called Azure. Because I found the entire project to be completely ridiculous. The good news is they did spend $7.5 million and they never finished it. They decided to cancel it and
How did they get Oracle involved?
What's that?
Did they get Oracle involved?
No. This project that I was working on was through ThoughtWorks and some other, I think CGI, some other large consulting company.
Oh, well, if they got ThoughtWorks involved, then $7.5 million is what you'd expect.
I think so. They paid me a software developer salary, and that was about a third. My salary was about a third of my monthly expenses for traveling and living.
Yeah.
And eating steak and drinking whiskey every night. So, it was. So these things exist where we're just building software to make life worse. I mean, that's an obvious case.
Yeah, and I remembered what I was going to say earlier, actually. But like what I discovered in building the infrastructure for this stream is that so Twitch is effectively free. It's actually quite expensive because if you don't yet have a subscription. Oh, by the way, we're at the point where if we just put a bit more work into this, we could actually enable subscriptions. I don't know whether we ever will, but we could. We've met all of the other prerequisites for affiliate tier. But what Twitch gives you is actually quite an expensive proposition for an RTMP receiver and an HLS player and IRC chat is what you get out of it. But because they have integrated it and are running it all themselves, presumably on AWS, especially now they're owned by Amazon, it's really hard for them to run. And they've got a big team of devs and they've got a massive international infrastructure to centralize what is basically a couple of IRC bots and like a replicated Nginx infrastructure. And if you just do one of those yourself, then yes, it takes some time to set up. But I probably only spent like 3 or 4 hours total on configuring the infrastructure for us to do it ourselves and then replicate the results into their platform. And there's one bit missing, and that is that I was using PeerTube for the replays. So I post them to YouTube after we finish every episode, and I post them to a PeerTube instance as well. And I've been paying through Patreon the administrator of that PeerTube instance, and I'm certainly not paying everything it costs that person to run that instance, but I think I'm paying a fair amount for the amount that we use it. But he has still had outages, including like just completely disappearing from the internet for weeks at a time and then coming back later. So I'm going to create a GNU Media Goblin instance to host the replays. Now that will probably take me another couple of hours at some time when I get around to it. But once it has taken me those 2 hours, like that will be 6 to 8 hours work. Amiga Gamer 1200 says put them on library. I don't like the cryptocurrency model of library. I refuse to do that. Once I've spent like what's going to be basically a day of work, then I will have the thing that is exactly equivalent in terms of the feature set that I need of Twitch, except that it only scales to one stream, not to every fucker on the planet streaming through this thing. But that's one day, not like hundreds of engineers over multiple years, just to go from one person to many people. And if I put more than 1 day of effort in, I could reduce that effort. Like you have put Vagrant files out for Nextcloud servers, and and Ansible recipes and things. If I put some time into that, which is what Aral calls the small web, I could get to the point where on a Linux box you type a command and you have Twitch for one person, and we are not doing that. We are we are centralizing it and making it much harder, so that we can get the VC funding, so that we can pay the engineers to centralize it and make it harder. And it's a completely weird system.
It really is. And one of the things that I want my future business to be, the thing that I hope to be doing for work in 2 years, my goal is to be doing this as my full-time job by the time I turn 40 in less than 2 years. I want, because it's easy. You and I have the skills to be able to install Media Goblin, to install this RTMP setup and things like that. But your average Twitch streamer doesn't have.
No, absolutely, yeah.
But what I want is the average Twitch streamer goes into Twitch, creates a free account, click, and they're streaming. What I want is for the average Twitch streamer, or maybe not the average Twitch streamer, but for somebody who wants to build a community of their own, to pay me the little bit of money that it costs me to run this thing and learn how to run it for them, so that they can then have their own community. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about things like I have a Spotify account only because the rest of my family wants a Spotify account, so I have a Spotify account. I prefer to consume my music by going to the band's website, a band that I like. I buy one of every album and then a T-shirt or something to be able to make sure that my money goes directly to the band. I would prefer if every band had their own Twitch channel, had their own thing.
Bandcamp,
Yeah, Bandcamp is really great for that, actually. One of my favorite bands, the Mighty Missoula, they're my favorite work music because there are no lyrics, so they don't distract me. I discovered them because they had Bandcamp, and then I emailed the guitarist from that band is an old friend of mine, so I emailed him and said, how much money do I have to PayPal you to get every album you have physically signed by everyone in the band? And he said, this is awesome, we're doing it. And so they mailed all my stack of albums around to because it was during COVID. They got a stack of albums, one person signed it, mailed it to the next person, The next person signed it. So I have a complete collection of the Mighty Missoula on vinyl and CD.
Sweet.
Everything signed, plus a T-shirt that I've worn on this stream at least once. And I was able to give that money directly to the band. That's how I want the world to work. And that's what I hope my work will be in the future. It's easy for me to set up a Nextcloud instance. It's also easy for me to publish all of the work that I use to publish a Nextcloud instance. But for the people who just want to pay, $10 a month to have access to Nextcloud, I want to enable those people to be able to choose these things, and they wouldn't have that choice unless they had my skill set. And that's where I hope my career goes. One of the funny things about Nextcloud that I was thinking about this week talking to you is I had all of my stuff on Nextcloud and then thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop managing my own Nextcloud because my wife uses a Mac. We can just pay for iCloud and stuff. And the only thing that I had a problem with in Nextcloud was sometimes it was missing a photo here and there. And I'd go and look for a photo, and I fucking found that this week. I was looking for a photo that I knew I took because I put it on Facebook of the Northern Lights outside of my house, and it's not in my iCloud photo library. The only place that photo exists now is Facebook. And Nextcloud never lost my photos. It just failed to sync them occasionally. And that was because Apple locked them out of the proper syncing protocols. They had to backdoor it using, I think they locked the GPS in order to backdoor photo syncing or something. It's really strange. And so it's really strange. Amiga Gamer 1200 makes a good point. People don't care or understand cloud privacy or security. If they got $10 a month for Nextcloud, they're probably already spending it on pCloud or Dropbox.
Yeah. So what I like about Nextcloud's marketing is I don't know whether we can see these stickers big enough.
I love the one. You have the nudes one. Who has your
that's
nudes?
the yellow one that's there. So who owns your nudes? Who owns your password? Who owns your data? who owns your chat logs, who owns your diary, and that is the maybe it's a sad state of affairs, and that is the way that you get this conversation on the table where you talk about revenge porn. Like, can't revenge porn if the person can't get access to your Dropbox, and the way they're going to get access to your Dropbox is not like any sort of malicious rubber hose cryptanalysis or any social engineering of a Dropbox engineer. They're just going to hit the password reset function and know what your secret answer is because they are your your ex-partner. They know you well enough to answer your security question.
Exactly. There's another thing. I think that to address the Amiga Gamer 1200's point, I think people are becoming. I think people are becoming aware of these problems. One of the stories that I heard recently about, and I mean, I say recently, I think it was like 5 years ago now. The FBI kicked in a door and raided a house because on one internet connection, the child was searching for new backpacks.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
The wife was searching for a new slow cooker, and the husband was searching for, I think chain oil for his chainsaw or something. Right. And those three things together, the FBI identifies as bomb-making ingredients. And so they kicked his door in and ruined his life because 3 different people searched for 3 different things in his house, and it got aggregated and flagged by the FBI. So I think that there are there are things like this that will help people. The other thing that I think is important that people haven't figured out yet, you mentioned it about like social engineering of a Dropbox engineer. I gave a presentation to a group of non-technical people about the merits of Nextcloud and why they should be interested in this. And somebody said to me, "But what about security?" And I said, "Well, there's a single point of security between you and your iCloud. When iCloud is a big target, if you can hack iCloud and get access to the data in a single breach, you get the access for tens or hundreds of millions of people. But if everyone has their own Nextcloud instance, the effect of a data breach is that one person's or one organization's Nextcloud data.
Yeah, it's like bananas. Like, if you know how to get your fungus to infect one banana tree, then bananas the world over are fucked because they're monoclonal, and so the same fungus can infect every banana in the world. But if you've got humans, not all humans are going to die of COVID-19. Even if it runs through the whole population, some people will have evolved different immune responses. And you could make an argument that not Nextcloud itself, because if everyone used Nextcloud, you'd be in exactly the same boat. But some people would have Nextcloud on OpenBSD. Some people would have OwnCloud on NetBSD. Some people would have some hodgepodge of rsync scripts and whatever on Linux. And, you'd have a more diverse system where there isn't necessarily a bigger the overall level of security is not necessarily higher, but the cost of taking control of any subset is significantly greater because of the diversity.
Yeah, and this is a thing that I think that we can solve. Obviously, what we need is people, and I hope that this person is me. I hope this is my future thing. Amiga Gamer 1200 points out that OpenStreamingPlatform.com is the self-hosted Twitch. Didn't we also find another one that was like a single Go program?
Yes.
After you set up Nginx and RTMP and stuff like that, I think you linked me and said, "Oh, I could have just run this one thing, and it would have given everything."
So OSP is Python and Flask.
Okay. And so what I want to be able to provide to the world is these things are great and they exist, and I want to open them to normals.
I think
That's what I hope my life's work will be.
Yeah, that's what Arala's doing with the small web spaces idea, that you just have like a single command. Okay, so you still need to know how to like get a Linux and and a terminal on it. But once you've done that, there's one shell script, and you've got a podcast website that you can post podcasts to, or an image sharing website, or a game streaming website, or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things that I was investigating last week that I think I'm going to start running with, and Matthew Scala hopefully is going to be interested in this. There are you can go to Shopify and you can open a store. You can go to BigCommerce.com and you can open a store. And there are a bunch of other options for that. But there are really great free software things for managing your online marketplace. But and Matthew Scala in particular has the ability and the skills to host his own e-commerce platform, but that's not his business. His business is selling synthesizer modules. He would like to pay someone else to do that. And what I want to do as a service provider is say, okay, I'm going to provide you with this great solution, the suite solution, where you can have your online store, but I'm going to give you a button that gives you a zip file of your database dump and instructions on how to host it yourself, so that you can quit me at any time when you feel like I'm not providing the service that you want. That's the business that I think is strongly missing in sort of advocacy for this free software stuff. And I would really like to see that for Twitch streaming and all of these other things that we do. The only thing left then is the network effects.
Right, and that is what we were talking about before, this idea that like freedom is only a small part of autonomy. And so, if you are able to choose your provider and to switch provider without interruption to service, then you have a more autonomous existence, which is, of course, why the services like Twitch and Twitter and Instagram don't let you do that. You can't redirect twitter.com/iwasleeg to an ActivityPub feed or a GNU status instance, because that would completely obviate the point of Twitter, which is to make sure that everybody has to be on Twitter in order to use Twitter.
Right.
And I think this was something that people started to recognise, particularly in the developer field, with Sun and Java in the universities in the 90s, where their killer move was to give universities Java for free in return for teaching Java to all the students. And so there is a decade of computer scientists who are now in jobs or in research who think that computing is Java.
And they had it was a brilliant move, because they had nearly 100% penetration of the United States. In Canada, I think Matthew Scala went to one of the schools that didn't buy the Java stuff, although they might have bought the Microsoft stuff. University of Victoria had a bunch of the people who are famous in the C# community actually are professors there. And then there's a small university, which I love, from my home province, called Acadia University. They were teaching Smalltalk at least in 2008. And so this was when every other school was only teaching Java.
Right.
Ivan Tomek was teaching Smalltalk and Lisp and C. Ivan Tomek wrote a few books about Smalltalk. And those, I think that is these things where we centralize around. This is actually another bug up my arse, is when you talk about. I had a conversation with a group about work recently where somebody said, "Oh, are you a Java programmer? Or are you a .NET programmer?" And I said, "Well, I think I've shipped as much code in Java and .NET as I have in .NET, but I've also shipped code in 30 plus other languages and platforms, so I don't consider myself either one of those things." And they didn't take that as oh, we can put you in both boxes. They took that as we don't know where to put you. Because they wanted me to answer which is my favorite. So yeah, it was a brilliant marketing move. If Apple were, not the biggest, most successful company in the planet, the biggest and most rich company in the planet. I do not like to.
Oh, that is successful depending on what game you're playing.
Right. I think that Apple probably, and they definitely did this in the school system that I went to junior high in on Vancouver Island. Apple gave us every year we would get new hardware from Apple, and then steeply discounted additional hardware if we promised to only use Macs in the whole school board.
Yeah.
But they didn't do this as effectively as Sun did, because they didn't have that big market of Sun was selling them. Sun was like, hey, you've got a $20 million bill for hardware coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Sun had so much markup that they could deep discount and make a profit, and so therefore they could give you a deep discount. Apple's margins, in that time, were not that big.
Yeah, I mean, Sun literally. I was involved in two of these conversations when I worked in local government. They had me as sort of an IT expert coming into to meetings where they didn't have an on-staff IT expert. One of these was actually at Acadia University. They wanted somebody from the local government to come in and have this meeting with Sun. And Sun said, by the way, you spend this many millions of dollars on our hardware every year. How about you spend $0 and promise to teach only Java? And fortunately, I had allies in the room, because I said, no, this is a terrible idea. Not only should you not take this deal, for less money, you can just fill the server room with, super micro racks and hire enough people to run Linux. And so, but it was a brilliant move on Sun's part. We had an entire, I would say it was 2 decades long. I would say from 2005, and it's still ongoing, where schools only teach Java.
Okay, here, and I think I mean here the UK rather than here specifically my institution. Most of science has moved on to Python now. Most of computer science may still use Java. Most of science is on Python. Physics is on MATLAB in Oxford University. Computer science is probably still Java, but we've got a load of Haskell people, so there's some Haskell as well. And social sciences is all R, but they don't consider that programming. They think of RStudio as a spreadsheet for doing stats. They don't see it as a programming tool for doing programming.
Yeah, it's really strange. I think that the Java schools problem, and I'm saying Java schools because I think that's what Martin Fowler called it when he talked about it on his Blicky. I think it was him that coined the phrase Java schools.
Right.
And I think it was uniquely not uniquely, but it was nearly ubiquitous in the United States, and it was very common in Canada. But I think it was less common in Europe and the UK. Right. And now I have to say those things separately. But it was definitely, I mean, it's completely ridiculous. I ordered an operating systems book recently because of a side project that I'm doing in my infinite spare time. And all of the code examples are in Java.
Nice.
There has never been an operating system written in Java. There never will be an operating system written in Java.
Now, Sun did have hardware. I don't think they ever productized it, but they actually no, they did, because the first version of the what was that thing called, the ultra thin client, Sunray. The first version of the Sunray was the Sun Java Station, Not just because they
can
used the
still
word
boot
Java
it.
in all their programming, in all their marketing, but because it had a CPU that could execute Java bytecode.
Right. So it did have the extra bytecode execution engine,
Hmm.
but it was still not an operating system written in Java.
Okay, right.
Um, in much the same way that Apple says Swift is a systems programming language, and they don't do any kernel
Hmm.
programming in Swift that I know of, and I've
Hmm.
looked a few times. And the so it's completely weird that you would write operating systems programming examples in Java. Completely weird to me. And I'm looking for operating system programming examples in preferably 68K or ARM assembly,
Yeah.
but all I can find is C. Um, and it's completely it's completely nuts that marketing sort of took this over. Amusingly, if you know the history of Java, Java came from Oak,
Yeah.
and Oak was a systems programming language, and the operating system in the entire computer was written in Oak.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just took some of the operating system bits out and made that the JVM, and then that became Java. But it's still weird to me. I mean, also it's weird to me that so little of sort of kernel programming in Mac OS 10 even, or Next Step for that matter, is done in Objective C. A lot of it is done in just plain C. Of
So,
course.
next step up. Well, no, not up to version 3. Next step exactly version 3, because earlier versions of Next Step didn't have public APIs for doing device drivers. Next Step 3 did because they were supporting Intel, and so you have to support third-party device drivers because nobody has. There is no such thing as a reference Intel PC. And that had driver kit. And if you've ever seen IO kit, I was the technical editor on a book of IO kit kernel programming, which isn't there, it's on a different bookshelf. Because I did some of this stuff when I was working on security software. And so driver kit, IO kit was this restricted version of C++ with no exceptions and sort of various other limitations. But the APIs were based on a thing called driver kit, which was an in-kernel version of Objective C that did device drivers on Next Step 3 and OpenStep. And no other platform had Objective-C device drivers, which meant that people were the device driver teams in companies were unwilling to learn it. So you get your iOmega Jazz drive, which has Mac drivers written in C and Windows drivers written in C, and no Next Step drivers, and that's a significant limitation. Also, and David Chisnell did some papers on running the Objective C runtime inside the Linux kernel for similar purposes.
Right. I do remember those.
But nobody particularly wants dynamic code execution in their kernel for reasons. So that's another reason that it's not a particularly popular way to work.
Right. Yeah. So we're a bit past the typical shit talking time, but I have something that can bridge the gap, which is that we had a pull request merged into Simple Agenda.
I don't know how you bridge the gap rather than just just doing a handbrake turn there.
No, I mean it's stream relevant, but it's also not writing code.
Yeah, that's true. I before we move on, there was a point I thought was interesting. That the conversation went down a different route, so we didn't pick it up, and I wanted to look at it. Movnot1 asked ages ago, "What do you think of the developers of Elementary OS getting a hard time a few years back for strongly encouraging people to donate when downloading their distro?"
I missed that one. It's a very good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, so they got a hard time years ago I have always tried to contribute when I have spare cash to these projects, so I don't have a particular problem with it. But that since time has moved forward, Canonical does this now when you
Yeah,
download Ubuntu.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I downloaded
And
Ubuntu the other day, which I do not use Ubuntu by choice for many, many, many historical, political, and personal reasons. But I had a reason to need to download Ubuntu, and I found it difficult to figure out how do I download Ubuntu without giving Canonical my money, because while I respect the individual contributions of people who Canonical paid salaries to, I don't necessarily respect Ubuntu or Canonical as an organization, and so I do not want to give them any of my money. The quick answer to that is because Ubuntu runs on all of the stuff they took from Debian. As a Debian person, you can go to cdimage.debian.org and get access to stuff. You can also go to cdimage.ubuntu.com and get exactly the same thing. So my opinion is that people should be strongly encouraged to contribute to software that they want to use. I'm not sure that I've seen this done in a way that I necessarily agree with or like. So I don't know that I have a specific opinion about Elementary OS asking for money, but other projects ask for money as well. I mean, Debian famously has more money than they know what to do with. They don't even know how to spend it all.
that's true of Mozilla. Despite Mozilla running out of money, they've run out of money because they're not allowed to spend it in the ways in which they could spend it, rather than because they don't have it.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story, a very short funny story about that. I talked to a childhood friend of mine who worked at Mozilla on projects that you've heard of, but I'm not going to name them because I would know who it was, who worked for Mozilla, but through 3 steps of corporations that Mozilla owned in order to get paid because of the rules around how Mozilla was allowed to spend their money.
Yeah.
And it was the same problem. Mozilla had to go through massive hoops to pay people to work on free software just because of the structures of the corporations around it.
And I think that, so my take on the question, I don't know specifically what Elementary were doing, whether it was coming across as nagging or aggressive or misrepresenting. But there's an idea that Brad Cox, so Stream Relevant Content, Brad Cox, inventor of Objective-C, had this idea in the 90s called super distribution, which was sort of object-oriented e-commerce. And what it addresses is the fact that, and you kind of, in complaining that Ubuntu are asking you to donate, or rather Canonical are asking you to donate to Ubuntu when all of the work, which is wrong, but some of the work was done by the Debian project. In pointing out that seems like an injustice, you're sort of on to the thing that Brad Cox noticed, which was software vendors don't write their software. Actually, giving the money to Debian is not fair because loads of the Linux contributors don't work for the Debian project and aren't going to get paid by SPI, or the GNU contributors, or all of the projects that Debian has packaged and sort of downstreamed. So you give your money to Canonical for Ubuntu. You don't give any money to the people who wrote GNU core utils, which is an important part of that distribution, which wouldn't exist, and Debian wouldn't exist without that. We've been at FOSDEM and seen that a grub, the current iteration of the bootloader, is basically written by 2 Hungarian students, one of whom is a graphics designer and one of whom is a coder. So one of them does the menus and one of them does the the software. And like they have no money whatsoever, despite the fact that like literally almost every computer in AWS and Azure and like any other cloud you mention has tens of millions of instances of Grub and wouldn't work without it, or would still be like on Lilo anyway.
Yep.
This super distribution idea, I've just seen the book, was for a thing that you couldn't have done on the technology at the time without having like essentially DRM chips in every computer, but you could now do on a blockchain. And now that Ethereum, which is one that has smart contracts, also is about to merge its proof of stake model, and so not require. I think the power consumption is going to go down by a factor of 200 when they merge this this change,
which is very important.
So you could do it in a reasonable way on blockchain technology. You have micropayments. So I pay Canonical to use Ubuntu. They pay the Debian project for like a share of their contribution to Debian, and they pay the Linux Foundation for a share of their contribution to Linux, and they pay the Node Foundation for a share of their contribution to Node, and they pay Software Freedom Conservancy for a share of their contribution to Samba. But then the Debian software also relies on Linux, and so they pay the Linux Foundation a bit, and they pay the GNOME Foundation a bit for the use of GTK and so on. And so, like, you at every level, you pay for using the software, and the software vendors top slice a bit of that, but pay out for the bits of the libraries they use. Amiga Gamer 1200 says pyramid schemes. No, not pyramid schemes, but pay per use for software. But at every level of the stack, like what there is a common thing in the Node world for people to try and go full time on their open source software because their project is used by every single fucking e-commerce platform on the planet, and fixing the bugs is a full time job, and then say I've run out of money. How have I run out of money on supporting this MIT licensed product full time? Well, the answer is MIT license. You chose to let people not give you any money, and now you're complaining at them for not giving you any money. If you had a payments architecture in place that was reasonable amounts of micropayments, then if everyone was paying like 1,000th of a cent for each Babel build in their CI farm, they would probably agree to that, and then you could have these kind of sustainable projects.
Yeah, there is. I when I was active in the Debian project, a new thing came out called PopCon, and at the end of the installation process, it says, "Would you please help us by installing the PopCon popularity contest package?" Because what that does is it allows the Debian project to say, to order the packages by how many installs there are, and then organize it so that the most popular packages are on the first CD, and the second CD contains the second most popular packages, and so on and so on. So that you can install Debian from a 3 CD or a 2 DVD package, setup, instead of give everything in Debian away. And I suggested, we've got money coming into Debian. Why don't we use PopCon to decide how we distribute money to people who are writing the software that we're using? And of course, the Linux contributors would get a large portion of that because most Debians are Linux based. The GNU project would get a whole bunch, and so on down the line. And I was shot down as this is not what we do. We don't distribute money. We pay for Debian development itself. And I have a personal experience with this exact thing because I created a very popular testing library in Ruby called RSpec, and there were periods, and I made a lucrative career. I can go to any somewhere between 80 and 90% of Ruby on Rails projects use RSpec for their testing. And so I have literally done this when people, post a job ad or looking for contractors or something, and I just email people and say, hey, you listed RSpec, TDD and BDD with RSpec as your first thing, and I invented that shit. So, I'm the person that you want for this gig. And I have made a career out of this personally, but the people who made way more of a career out of RSpec than me were people who were just better marketers. They fixed one or two bugs. One guy in particular who I won't name because I don't think this is a bad thing. I just wish I had thought of it. Fixed two bugs in RSpec like 10 years ago, became a core contributor because we just added everybody back then, and then built a massive career based on being on the RSpec core team in the Ruby community. And I don't think that was evenly distributed either, because the people who did most of the work on RSpec were never actually paid for the work on RSpec or work around it. They were the guy who did the most important work on RSpec, David Shalimsky, doesn't even work in Ruby anymore, as far as I know. And so he did the most important work and was never paid for any of that. And I think that, that maybe the time has come for this kind of thing. Maybe the ship has sailed and we just can't, we can't unring that bell of, this free software is free and corporations are going to exploit you. And also the corporations have centralized so heavily that you can't compete with them anymore. Elasticsearch was trying to build a business around building a really great search product and found that they were having trouble. So they changed their licensing terms, and Amazon said, fuck it, we've got 100 people who work on this, so we're just going to fork it and give it away because we're already paying these people anyways. And I don't know what that has done to Elasticsearch, but I suspect it will kill Elasticsearch. And they invented this thing. Also personally related, I worked on Neo4j for a while, and I worked there until it stopped being entirely free software. And that was one of the main reasons why I quit. The other one being that they fucked up my work permit and wouldn't say sorry. And when I worked at Neo4j, there were, the main conversations had around the table were often things like, how do we get people who are using this on tiny projects with no money to pay us massive amounts of money? And so I think that was the wrong way to address it, but there has to be something there. And I really like Brad Cox's idea of super distribution. Unfortunately, I think that ship has probably sailed. Like I said before, and I will say again, what I hope my future work is that I will get paid by people who want to use this software, and I will enforce that whatever contributions that I have to make that software work better are also going to be out in the open for others to use as well. But I'm still charging. Nobody gives a shit about the software that I have to write to make it work. They only give a shit about whether, when they pay me either 10 or 20 or whatever dollars per month, that the thing that they're paying me for works. They don't actually, often in these cases, they don't actually care if it's free software under the hood or not, or the people who worked on it are getting paid. And that's unfortunate.
Now watch this for a segue. Speaking of making sure that our work is freely available to those who want to use it, we had a pull request accepted in Simplicator. That's how you do it. That's a much better way. Right, I live a lot further south than you. Amiga Gamer 1200 says please like and subscribe.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, I live much further south. I have to turn my light on now.
I guess technically I don't have to turn my lights on at all because the sun doesn't really go down up here. But I still do turn on the lights because I closed the blinds earlier. And so I actually started talking to some of my family in Canada last night, asking them, hey, I don't remember, because I haven't lived there for a while, does the sun go down where you are? And I realized that everyone, even I have relatives who live in the north of Canada, and they are 10 degrees of latitude south of me. Because nobody lives. In fact, as I understand it, the Canadian government pays you money if you live north of 60.
Right.
And I live at my house up north is at 63 and a half. So nobody in Canada lives this far north. But yeah, so Graham made an excellent segue, and that's why Graham carries me on these streams.
Well, I have absolutely run out of brains, so all I can do is talk shit. I'm not going to do anything productive. But so just to, I just want to confirm in the ASCII man page. So in the octal set, yes. So the lowest. Oh, okay. We made a 2-bit change to simple agenda. We changed the lowest 2 bits of the first character in the version string in the iCalendar file format from 01 to 10. As a result of which, Nextcloud support now works. So those 2 bits, Philippe Roussel now believes that Nextcloud support works, and has just merged that PR and closed that bug. Now, we had a bunch of other tasks we were interested in on that bug,
Yes.
which we could pursue as separate PRs. Is that the direction we want to take?
I think so.
Okay.
I need a quick break before we do that. Give me a minute, and you can, I guess, pull up the GitHub page. I'll be right back.
Exactly. So, literally what we did was that Nextcloud rejected files that were in the iCalendar version 1 file format. Look, SR Baker gets a contributor thing, and I don't, even though we both contributed to that PR, and I made sure that both our names appeared on it. Thank you, GitHub. Anyway, so the Nextcloud rejects version 1, even though it's basically backwards compatible. So we changed the version number reported from 1 to 2, and now it works. But we had to do some manual trickery. So the URL that Nextcloud tells you to use for finding your calendar is one of these 2. And we had to use this one. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to use the information, like Nextcloud basically says, if you ask prop find on the endpoint that it tells you, then Nextcloud says, oh yeah, there is a calendar with read access over at this other URL, and there is a calendar with write access at what happens to be the same URL. And it would be a better user experience to follow those redirects, so that you get the experience of copying the URL that Nextcloud tells you, and then getting your calendar in place. This was one that we fixed. This was a problem that I realised was wrong during the progress of the stream, and there's also some UI stuff. But I think that one fixed. This is the meat and 2 veg one. This is the if you paste the URL that Nextcloud gives you into the app, it should work. And actually, there was another thing that you noticed, which was that if you have multiple calendars, in Nextcloud you have to create multiple calendar stores in order to use any more than one of them.
Yeah, I would like when you go to add, Simple Agenda treats each calendar as a separate calendar, and I would like it to say this endpoint has multiple calendars. Which one would you like? And let you select multiple of them.
Okay.
I think that is a larger feature. I think following the proxy is probably, Well, the credentials one is very, very useful and interesting. But I think following the proxy is probably a shorter path.
Yeah, we're going to have to add some kind of dependency to do safe credential storage. I don't actually know what Simple Agenda is doing for its credential storage. Probably just saving them in user defaults or in a
Mhm.
plain text file somewhere. Um, but like there isn't a keychain services for GNU Step, or there isn't a security framework for GNU Step, which would be a useful addition. But then we'd have to think about what kind of dependency we want to introduce, and does it exist cross-platform on Windows and the various Unix platforms, and uh, and then make a thing that is API compatible with the Mac. So it would be a useful piece of work, but a large piece of work. Right, I
Mhm.
will go and take my comfort break while you do the next thing.
All right. So the next thing I think is probably to pull the code, the latest code. If you haven't done that already, I didn't hear it. So I'm going to assume that we need to pull the latest code. So where am I? GNU Step apps. Maybe it's just in simple agenda. This is. And it has the correct origin. And we are currently on our branch, so we can check out master. And then, and hopefully, if I look at the git log, we will see that our thing was merged. Let's see if I can going. May. Aha, okay. And we're preparing for a new release. It says here in this commit, it says we're preparing for the 0.45 release, which is great. And some other new things have been added as well. So since we have that, let's build. Going to reverse search. No, I'm not going to reverse search. So we will just make it. That will build the latest version that has our pull request merged, and then we can delete our local branch because it's been merged. Oh, let's see if there are actually any tests there. It looks like there are some tests, so we're going to run them. Uh, 168 past tests, and everything is okay. I'm going to trust that that is true. And if we run simple agenda, they're not going to run simple agenda because I do not have access to a slash. What if I just do this? Oh, it's in the app folder. Okay, my keyboard doesn't have slash. It does have ampersand. That is weird. I do have parentheses. Oh, I wonder if there's another button for a slash that I can use. I guess I'm waiting for Graham for that one. And if we open Emacs again, let's Emacs on the current directory.
Oh, I fixed the Cocoa Emacs. If you
Oh, great. Let's use that. So click the icon.
yeah.
All right, let's use that. All right. And then we can go into. I think my control key is messed up,
Oh, nice.
and I don't know why. Yeah. Okay. So you can go ahead and open up the GNU Step Simple Agenda folder.
Well, you could metax visit file or whatever it is.
My meta doesn't seem to work either. That's weird. I've never
Okay,
had
well
that problem.
let's not use that Emacs then.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I don't get. Oh, I know what this is. There is because like it's actually not getting focused properly at all. This is an interaction between GNU-step GUI and Window Maker bug that has been fixed in the latest GNU-step GUI release. But I have got GNU-step GUI from ports, so I don't have that version. So actually, we want to... Oh, it's still not doing it. Right. There we go.
Okay.
So actually we do want that one.
All right. So there's a new version. I don't have a slash, so I was unable to run the new version.
How do you not have it?
Not that I do not have a slash. I have no idea why, because I had slash last week on the same computer.
What's you trying to run?
I was trying to run Simple Agenda app.
Okay, well,
while you were
what we first. Okay,
and I've checked out the latest.
Okay,
and so we
and
can
built
actually
it.
delete. Yeah, and built it, so we can actually delete our bump by calendar version.
Right.
All right.
Oh yeah, well, I want to run the versions in here, not anything that might be installed.
Right. There we go. And it loaded. I did say that I was going to delete that test account at the end of the stream, and I didn't.
That much is evident. So, whoops. So there is an event in there that isn't showing up in that view. Oh, and that's just zooming. It's not. Oh no, that one's bulk because it's today, and that one is bulk because it has an event in it. That's just confusing UI.
Oh, that's kind of a confusing UI bit. Yeah. Okay. All right. So so the group dev store there is working. I think the thing to do now is to try and add the URL that Nextcloud gives us.
Yeah.
And I will paste that if I can figure out pasting it. Let me. We can use the Firefox on screen.
Firefox, yeah.
And I can. Oh, my control key works here, so we can do.
Yeah, it was just that Nextcloud, that Cocoa Emacs triggers the GNU-step window maker focus bug.
Right. Okay. And we're already logged in, so we get the dashboard. Sweet. That's very nice. All right, so if we go over to the calendar.
Oh no, there is an event in today's calendar.
Is there?
Yeah.
Right. I put in an event for today's stream.
Yep.
That's right. Why is it not showing up in Simple Agenda?
Because the view in Simple Agenda, if you switch back to Simple Agenda, this view in Simple Agenda only goes down to 16, to 18. It doesn't go to...
Oh. Aha, right. Okay, yeah, I saw you looking at that. Okay. It's weird that it doesn't scroll.
Yeah.
If I click on the arrow next to today, is it going to expand?
You have apparently held the mouse pointer down in one place.
There we go.
But you can't can't see it in the view. Okay, well that's a separate bug. We could file that as a bug. We've got the GitHub page open.
Oh, okay. I don't know which way it expects me to scroll. There we go. Let's file that as a bug.
There's a new issue button, the green one.
New issue button that I missed. There we go. Let's see. It's the day view, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. And okay, so that's filed. Now we can go back in here, settings and import. And if we scroll down, we get the iOS, macOS Caldav endpoints. Caldav link copied to clipboard. That sounds promising. Let's put it in Scratch. There we go. So I believe we curl. Do we have Bash history from last week in here?
No, because we're not using Bash.
Right. Okay. So I believe if we create a new tab and then we curl x prop find that, and then we need to also put in new step colon. I think the password is this. There we go. And we get let's see, this response. Oh, right. What we did last week was paste that response into Emacs to format it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have a. Can you create a file, an XML file? I do not have a slash. All right, and I can paste that, and then we can. I also can't indent this. Can you please indent that?
Do you have an escape key? Yeah.
I do. Oh, right. Nope, I need to mark.
I was just going to press escape Q. Oh, okay. Forget that. No, don't do that.
Whoops.
Right. I was going to press escape Q, which repaginates the buffer.
Okay. So we get a remote that says this is what we talk to, and then we say, and then we get a response that says remote PHP Dav principles users can use step calendar proxy read and calendar proxy write.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what to do with these, so I'm going to curl again and write that in. Remote PHP Dav principles and slash.
No. Yep.
User is another one.
You do know that you can copy and paste between Emacs and Terminal, right?
Oh, yeah. I suppose I can. Oh well, I'm already typing. There we go. And what did we get? We just got. I think that means that it exists. So I think we want to do a get on that now. I could be wrong. Nope. Okay. So we need to look at the code to see what it's doing when it tries to fetch the.
Can't we just do a quick search for Caldav and proxy read?
Oh, that's an excellent idea. And SaberDav, I think, is the right thing.
Blah blah blah. One specification not found. Because of course.
Yes. Okay. All right, well, let's go back and see. If you want to give user access A, give user A access to user B's calendars. They need to be part of the... Okay, maybe that proxy thing is not what I thought it was.
Okay.
But it must be, because that is the URL that it gives us to use in iCal. So iCal is doing something with that.
Yeah, iCal's able to find the calendar given that URL.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we look at building a Caldav client in the SaberDav documentation?
Okay, here we go.
Okay. And it says it's running prop find on calendars John Doe home, which I think is what we ran. I'm just going to switch to the terminal for a second. And we did users GNU step. So this is when you already have the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where the how do we list calendars?
So there's a menu item on the left that says Service Discovery.
There we go. Okay, and well-known is supported by Nextcloud, but I don't have it configured right, so we're not going to do that. Let's see if I can scroll a little. And the DNS SRV records, which I don't use, also. Okay. This is for discovering the availability of the actual Caldav service.
Right. Okay.
So it's not that. Let's see what delegation says.
That's the page we're just looking at.
Oh, right. Okay. Let's see what integration guide says. How you can set up a Caldav server. We already have a Caldav server. There is something being written in chat.
Yep.
I'm going to switch up here so I can see it. There we go. Amiga Gamer 1200 gives us a link to Dav Caldav proxy. Thank you for the help.
That's what we were just looking at.
Oh, okay. So this is... Yeah.
Yeah, this is not the thing that we want.
No, it is not.
And that is not the thing we want. Okay, this page is not the information that we want.
Right. Okay, so let's see here. We must be able... Well, let's see what they're saying getting started. We haven't clicked that link yet. This is setting up the database and so on.
That's setting up their server, I think.
Right, okay. Which we already have. Okay, so it tells us that the principal URL is the principals admin, which we already have. We have principals, users, GNU step. And the calendar URL is whatever. So let's see what we...
But it also says iOS, iCal, BusyCal, and many others typically require number 2 and sometimes number 1. So there still must be a way to get from the user principal to the calendar.
Yeah, there must be a way to say, give me the list of calendars. There has to be a way for that.
So is that
yep.
Is that well-known URL like typically set up and you have screwed it up, or is it typically not set up and you have to set it up in order for it to work?
The latter.
Right. Well, if it's that one, then perhaps we just need to set up a different testing server and you make that work.
possible. So the well-known URL is the reason why the well-known URL support exists is so that ours doesn't say this. It doesn't say principals admin. It says principals users GNU step. And the well-known URL gives you that full URL. So in case you have Nextcloud installed in a like a path instead of on a root. So well-known is not a thing that helps us with calendar listing.
Okay, right.
I still wonder if building a Caldav client helps us with this. So we have retrieving calendar information, but what about finding the list of calendars? That I remember from last stream that we got a list of calendars in one of these calls, and I don't remember which one.
Okay. Guessing it right. Stack Overflow driven development.
Prop find that. Oh, well, this is the question. We want to see the answer, I guess.
Well, so that's the response they're getting. Is it? Yeah, so they get a calendar. Yeah, when they run prop find on it, they do get a list of calendars back, and we just get the two proxies. They do report. Oh no, that's a different. Oh, but they're posting this body as well.
Aha, okay. So it says here, how you do discovery in Caldav. You do a prop find on the URL the user supplied, requesting dav current user principal. Using this URL, you do a prop find to find out more information about the user.
Right, so you do a request for... So you actually need to supply the request in the body of the request. Sorry, you need to supply the query in the body of the request.
Right. Okay. So then we use the calendar home set to do a prop. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. We do a prop find requesting dav. Where does this link to? Oh, it links to the RFC. Okay, that's useful. Okay, so then we do what they're doing up here, I guess. Prop find with this body, I guess. With the XML namespaces dav : calendar set home or whatever that was called in the answer. So how do we do that with curl? I think we do that using -d for post data. -d. And we're going to say and
no, you didn't paste.
Oh,
you pasted something different.
Oh no, I used the wrong copy key. Can you do I'm lagging a little bit. Can you do the copy and paste of that XML in there?
Yep. Because the middle button still works, so you can just select it with the mouse and then
right.
Middle button.
Okay. Right. And then a close quote, and then we'll see what we get. And what did it give us? Give us a 200 OK. Oh, yeah, let's paste that and format it. It still looks like the same exact response.
Well, it might be.
So we get a...
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Okay, and then we get the calendar proxy read. Get last modified, calendar proxy write. I don't see... but we did get a 404 count at the end.
Yeah, but we get that on the this other property, right? We get 200 on the proxy ones. We get 404 on the quota ones. But
Right. Okay.
the second stage of the answer was using the URL, which I imagine is the principal for the URL.
Ah, right.
Because we want to find out more information about the user. So we've got, and that presumably is actually the same. Yeah. So we are on the principal URL. We now want to find the Kaldav namespace. So does that give us something different?
I think it's Dav colon Caldav.
Okay. Oh, actually, so is Dav the namespace, and
Yes.
then we want the Caldav.
Ah, perhaps. And we got the same.
Yeah, that looks the same, doesn't it?
That looks exactly the same. Yeah. What we're looking for is the word personal, I think. So using this URL, you do a prompt find to find out more information about the user. Here you should typically request for the calendar home set property
Okay.
in the Caldav namespace. Yeah.
Right. Oops, that doesn't look right. Okay, so namespace Caldav is not
I think when they
defined.
say the Caldav namespace, they're talking about the Dav colon namespace. So we can leave that in.
Nope.
No, I mean, sorry, leave it in XMLNS, but remove from here. Yeah.
What?
We already did that one. So take out Caldav colon and just get calendar home.
No, we tried that.
Oh,
and
that
we got
is
the
what
same
we tried.
thing.
Uh-huh.
So there is this. Okay, there is an XML namespace cal here, which is the one for Caldav. So is it actually? Nope, it's not that either.
Cal prop find as the root element. Okay, yeah. So it expected Dav colon, but received. It expected Dav colon, but received Cal colon. Okay.
That is less useful than I hoped.
Well, this one says to request on calendars.
No, but that's just an example of a URL on a server, isn't it?
Right. Right. Yep. No.
If defined, it may be protected and should not be returned by an all prop request. So we shouldn't be making. So that's why that doesn't work. Sorry.
Right.
That doesn't show it up.
Right.
But so there must be some way to, like, what I want to see is an example of that request.
Up there's calendars and address book discovery mechanisms. Let's try that. Okay, so this one gets the user principals, which we already have. We already have the user's thing.
Yeah.
And we want
Okay, so you can get.
No, we don't. Do we want features?
Okay, that returned nothing.
Hmm.
But because it's in the headers. How do you show the headers in?
I think capital H. Oh,
Okay.
maybe. Nope. Okay. Nope. Nope. Curl is so awesome, but it's huge.
Yeah.
Oh, H is for setting headers, right? We don't want to set headers. We want to dump them.
Right. Include the response headers in the output. -I.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So yeah, there is calendar access and calendar availability. Right. During this request, the client application creates a location of calendars and address books. That's what we want. Okay, right. So you have to define that namespace inside the request.
Oh, okay.
So it's that one.
That should be Dav, not Cal. That XML.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then we need A prop, and then B calendar home set with the namespace set.
Oh, I'm going to have way too many quote marks in this. Oh, fuck, I've got those quotes in there as well. Jesus.
Namespace tree.
Yeah, because I fucked that up.
XML NS.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Okay, so we got.
Oh, it's still getting the same thing. No, we haven't. We've got the calendar home set as that URL, which is the one that we used over here, isn't it? Dav/calendars. Wait, no, down here. Dav/calendars/user. Yeah, so we've got from.
Right. And so that's telling us where the root of the list of calendars is. So we want the list of calendars in the home set.
No, we're already there. We're already there. We were able to get that calendar used in Simple Agenda by using that URL, which is the URL that's given us there. So we can now get from the iCloud base URL. I think we should just document this and then give up for the evening because it's already 9:05. But
okay, I want to do one more thing.
Yeah,
I want to do one quick thing and run this again. I want to create a new calendar and see if it also shows up in the list.
Well, no, that's the home set. If you remember, what happened in Simple Agenda was that it then gave you, we put that in, and it then gave you a list of calendars from which you could show events and appointments, events and reminders.
Right. Okay.
So from this point
So
on,
then,
Simple Agenda already has a way of dealing with that. It may not be an ideal way, but I think there's two different issues here.
okay. All right. Yep. I agree with you. Let's document this and call it.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
All right. Go ahead.
Right. Where should I put it? I'll put it in. Do I have a documents folder? No. I don't want to put it in the Simple Agenda project because that's version controlled in Git and we're not going to commit this.
Yeah, let's just create a Simple Agenda to do or something. Great. And we should also, after you do this, paste the curl in, but also I would put a link to the documentation where we found that as well.
Yeah, good call.
Okay.
Nope, that pasted the wrong thing. That, on the other hand, didn't.
There we go.
Right, now we can put the results in. Oh dear.
You type about undo. There we go.
That'll do.
Okay.
So
yeah.
What,
okay.
Yeah. So what that gives us is I suppose what we do in Simple Agenda then next stream is if I suppose we need to know that what we're looking at is the URL of a principal, not the URL of a calendar.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or we just deal with it if we get an error trying to get calendar information out of the URL. We go, okay, well let's see if we can find a calendar from it then.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something like
I think
that.
that's. I think it might also be useful as an off-stream activity, which I will see if I can figure out how to do. See if I can capture the traffic that iCal is actually sending.
Right. Yeah. And you should be able to do that just using the firewall on your Nextcloud server. The packet filter.
Right. Yep. That's right. Yep. Okay. I will. I'll take a look at that. Watch.
Yeah, so Amiga Game 1200 said they were going to fill your calendar with Amiga OS 3.2 release because that came out over the last week. Not that that's relevant to this stream, but
yep.
But it did. There's a new Amiga OS.
Right. Well, we'll be Caldav experts at the end of this. We can make a calendar out for Amiga OS.
Yeah, I wonder whether there is a a document that is like a bit more sort of high level than this and just gives an overview of Caldav and Caldav architecture that isn't an RFC, so not a specification and not an example, but just a guide. And I expect that there is one that was published by O'Reilly in the 90s.
Yeah, well, Caldav hasn't changed a lot, so
No,
for calendar.
Yeah, my point is that it won't be a modern book. You won't be able to find one that won't be able to get the pragmatic Caldav in Elixir or anything like that.
Yep. Although this document here, it seems high level ish. So here's the listing of calendar.
It is a recipe, and it happens to be exactly the recipe we want.
Yep. Okay, that's great.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please do like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe.
And yeah, that's it. I guess we will see you next time.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.